Is this on? Yeah. So, hello everyone. I really don't know how to do this anymore, kind of. But hey everyone, this is Fabio, and it's good to see you all. If you're still here, I know I kind of disappeared. This is not a big announcement. It's like I'm back, kind of video. It's just something that I thought of doing for the past 10-ish days or something, because the reality is like I never really went away, even though I haven't made any video on YouTube for the past year. Basically, it's a weird thing in a sense that on a way I always like doing videos, share my opinions and feelings on certain games and chatting with you guys, but also like this year being like this year, well, in 2023 I've been particularly busy. And also, let's face it, I was also lazy throughout the year because at certain points I really wanted to make a couple of videos, but then my laziness took the better of me and said like, nah, let's do something else. That's kind of enjoying what I like to call my indefinite sabbatical from YouTube. Not that it's a great loss, of course, because like my channel, it's ridiculously small, but as I always enjoyed doing it and the interaction with all of you following me, and I always appreciate that, of course. So yeah, I skipped some interesting occasions and opportunities, but it's fine. You know, the thing is, I really wanted to do this specific video, which is the game of the year. We're already in January, so technically I'm a bit late, but it's fine. I can do this whenever I want. I know some of my friends do it like in March or something, so there aren't specific rules. Whatever works for you, it's always fine. But this is a sort of video I always like to do. It's a sort of gaming journal, and to see the results of my gaming year, because in the past few ones I decided to change my approach on how I play my games, and that it's primarily by making a plan at the beginning of the year and say, I'm going to play these games. So it's also a good sort of backlog challenge, if you want to call it like that, to use an old school term. And I have to say it has been working pretty well for me. It's a good way to play games that maybe by picking games at random I would skip and say, oh, I need to play these big games. Oh, let's play this niche JRPG, which is something that used to happen very often. Now I said, look, let's have a clear plan for the year, and then we'll see at the end if it has worked. And I have to say, like, it's been a good method for me. Like, I need the methodology. That's the thing with me and gaming. So, I have to be honest, 2023 has been a particularly good year for me, gaming-wise. I played and beat more games than I can remember. Not that many. I only played and finished 16 games, which for me, for my standards, is quite a lot. I don't know how I managed to do that, because this 2023 has been, I keep saying this year, because I still needed to connect the fact that we're in 2024. But in 2023, because I didn't expect to play this many games, because usually my idea is to play between like 10 and 12, basically. That would be already, like, if I manage to play 12 games, so one per month, basically, to me it's already a big success. But playing 16 was excellent. I was really happy, and, well, technically 17, because I haven't added one game to this list. I'll tell you in a moment. But the reason why I think I managed to play so many games is like, well, yes, I was very busy. I think the combination of different type of games helped, of course. I didn't play exclusively big-ass RPGs, because otherwise I would play probably 4 of them. Because at the beginning of the year, I also had to finish Persona 5 Royal, which is not included in this list, because I played 90% of it in 2022, and in fact it ended up in last year Game of the Year list. So adding that, I was able to play many games. So as I said, like, a combination of that. I played a couple of them together with my best friend here, and which was great. I'll talked about that when we get there. And also just long night sessions, I guess, because that's how I play games for the most part. I play them at night, like after dinner, whatever. I play a couple of hours, even more if it's necessary, before going to sleep and start over. Maybe during the weekend I play a bit more during the day, but it works for me. So the 17th game, I was about to forget that already. You can tell I'm really out of practice with this. So as I say, play 16 games. There was another one that I decided not to add, and that is Mass Effect 1 on the Legendary Edition, because I started to play that, and of course that is all I can play right now, even though I already have my plan for 2024. Maybe I'll share it with you on another occasion. It's going to be very difficult to force me to sit on this chair and make another video, but we'll see. At least, because again, I like to do the game of the 2024 gaming plan video as well. We'll see. But yeah, I started just out of whim because I finished my 16th game, and I was very happy. It's like, you know what, just to celebrate the end of the year, what the hell, let's put in the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, which I bought it like halfway through the year, or even earlier, like in March or something like that. But I never touched it because I was afraid of exactly what is happening now. So I started to play Mass Effect, and now I couldn't put it down. I know I'm going to play the rest of the series, so I'm well into Mass Effect 2, which is amazing. It's so great being back in that series. Of course, I'm going to play Mass Effect 3, because it's my favorite of the series. And most likely I will replay Andromeda, which I liked it, so it's not a problem. But I decided not to include Mass Effect on the list because I honestly don't know where to put it. Because I'm such a huge fan of Mass Effect, and said, oh, of course, it's number one. But not really, because Mass Effect 1 is, to me, the weakest of the series. Even though it's a fantastic game, I really enjoyed replaying it. It was great. So, but I decided that was just for me. And the same, like in 2024, I'm not going to add all the Mass Effect games I'm going to replay to my gaming year. For that, I'll have my plan, which already doesn't include new releases, so it's complicated. But excluding Mass Effect, I have here my list for the 2023 games that I played, and after this long prologue, but it was kind of necessary to explain my methods and everything, and also just to say hello, we're going to start ranking the games. So, very happy with my 2023. There was, however, one disappointment, and I was really surprised, and not just myself, also back in February, I don't even remember when I played this, I shared some feelings about this game, and some fans, like I'm on a couple of Discord pages, and some fans of the game were actually surprised of the fact that I was disappointed by it, and this was one of the big opportunities I missed to do another video, but I really didn't feel like it, and I'll explain why in a moment. But at number 16, bottom of the list, and as the disappointment of 2023, we have Trails to Asia, the final installment of the crossbow games of the Legend of Heroes series. So this would be the 5th Trails game, chronologically speaking, like in release order. And boy, I was disappointed. I mean, this is, to me, by far the weakest Trails game. I already wasn't that impressed with Zero, but thinking about it, while it's not my favorite by a really long shot, I would say it's probably the second weakest. Like, I'm not a fan of the crossbow games, which is something that surprised a lot of people I know who are Trails fans. Like, what do you mean you don't like it? I think they're the best. I say, no, I really don't like them. But the Zero had some good ideas. Like, of course, when you do these very long videos, immediately someone will like ask you, can you do this errand, but also this, and this? So, where was I? I believe I was talking about Trails to Asia. Yes, we just started, so this is going to be long. So yes, I don't remember what I was saying, so if I repeat myself, sorry about that. But yeah, the thing is, I was really disappointed by this game. Like, Zero, while not particularly better, but a little bit, had some interesting idea. I really like the setting of Crossbow City. I like the Mafia as the villains or supposed villains. Then you discover that, of course, they didn't matter. It was all part of the plan of the big villain, which was a huge letdown in this game, I have to say. Um, really felt just for like the twist for sake of a twist, which is something that I hate when games or movies or whatever do that. Sometimes it's not necessary, guys. But also, just the story wasn't really. I wasn't feeling it. It wasn't particularly good. I don't like this cast of characters particularly. To me, they feel like subpar for the most part to the rest of the series. There are some gems here. For example, I think the best character in this whole part of the stories of the crossbow side of things, it was Randy, and I think he should have been the protagonist. Certainly not Lloyd. Lloyd Bannings might be my least favorite character in the series. Of the main ones, I think he was a terrible, bland protagonist. Really didn't like him. Like his part of the story, there's a resolution of his brother's murder, which was a letdown to me because it's connected to who the mastermind is. Really disappointed by that. The final chapter of the game was awful, I think, for really the worst chapter in the entire series by far. It was just a sort of boss rush with no real purpose with the story. It was terrible, and also such a waste of Ouroboros. Like, Ouroboros should have had nothing to do, or almost nothing to do with the events of Crossbow. Maybe just pulling the strings a little bit with a couple of characters, like introducing like Arielrod and the Stahlritter in Crossbow was such a waste of their time, and it really weakened them, in my opinion. So they presented like such a threat somehow in Cold Steel, but in here, like, oh, they're being defeated by a bunch of cops. So yeah, they're not a threat. So a huge waste of Ouroboros' time. Yeah, didn't like it very much. So it's not a bad game, but it's definitely the weakest of the series by far. And the thing that drives me crazy, and then I'll move to something else, is that this game to me is kind of the definition of overhyped. Meaning that I've been a fan of the series since the beginning. Like, I played Trails in the Sky first chapter on the PSP, then I waited for second chapter and the rest to come out. So I've been a loyal fan of this series. And a lot of people played like the Japanese version or the fan translated version of this game. I patiently waited for an official release, let's say. And while I was waiting, I heard nothing but people singing and praising the Crossbow game. Say, oh, you like Cold Steel? Wait until you play Crossbow. It's so much better. Azure is the best of the series. Wait till you play Azure. That's what I heard for almost a decade, basically. Now I play these games and say, oh, wow, these are not as good as people said. Almost to the point that they were not worth the wait. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but they were a letdown to me. Both Zero, but especially Azure. As I said, easily the worst game in the series to me. I don't understand why people think this is the greatest Trails game. I don't see it. Like, explain it to me, because I really don't understand your motivations and reasons for this statement, because I think easily my least favorite. So let's move away from Trails to Zero, because I mentioned at the beginning I missed some chances to do some videos here and there, and this was one of those. I wrote a sort of like 15 pages essay on why I don't like Trails to Azure and how I would almost redo the entire game, because the Crossbow series really needs some rewriting, in my opinion. Like, the way it is now, not very good. Some good ideas at the beginning, some good characters here and there, but for the most part, they were quite a letdown. Like, as I said, easily the worst part of the Trails series. Let's move into number 15. Still on the Nintendo Switch, which, by the way, was the main console of the year together with the PS4 for me. No surprises, to be honest. And number 15, we have Warhammer 40k, Shoot Us, Blood and Teeth. As you know, I'm a huge Warhammer 40k fan. It's becoming one of my favorites. Like in the past few years, I revisited this hobby of mine, like that I have ignored for a decade, basically. Because I always liked Warhammer and Warhammer 40k, but never really got into the actual hobby because that would be impossible. But I always enjoyed reading about the lore, watching videos about it, or listening to podcasts about it, because it's such a fascinating universe. So I wanted to get more into the games side of things, especially with 40k, because I think it's the best version of Warhammer. So I decided to go with the easiest one, because I have a couple of other 40k games, but this was the perfect, I think, in-between RPGs kind of game, palette cleanser. But the grand scheme of things kind of not disappointed me, but I didn't like it as much as I thought I wanted, kind of thing. I mean, it's fun, but it got repetitive really quickly. I really like the art style, and it's a very like what's this? Now I cannot remember the name. Yeah, it's not coming now. Metal Slug, there you go, kind of game. Jesus, kind of completely blank there. So it's a very Metal Slug kind of game, arcadey. It's fun, but it gets repetitive after half an hour, basically. It's not very long either. And also to say, like, one of my favorite parts of the game, it's the opening, because it's hilarious, just as you would expect from a game focused on the orcs.
The humans call this place Lutius. Lutius. Stupid name, stupid humans. The Yumi's been drilling for the gold juice here for ages, pumping it out, sticking it in their battle wagons to make them go through. Now we want it for our wagons, make them go through instead. The Imperial Room is giving us a right fight, but they ain't stopping war, Gutracker. Oh no. We's gotta take the loot out of Lutius, cause we's the biggest, the bestest war around.
I mean, that was glorious, but after the first couple of levels, it's like, whatever, let's move to something else. I have to say, loved the Gene Stealer Cult level. Like, that was great. The thing is, with orcs, I like them as comic relief, but not really playing as an orc. Call me boring traditionalist, but I am more of an Imperium fan, so... But even with all I say, like, there is a lot of potential with this kind of games and 40k. I think it would be amazing to have a 40k Metroidvania with this sort of art style, maybe a bit more serious. You play, I don't know, not as a Space Marine, but say as a Sister of Battle, for example, or something like that, but in a Metroidvania environment. That would be great, I think. It would work very well for 40k. Imagine, like, you have to explore a Space Hulk as, say, a Sister of Battle or something, and you fight your way through Tyranids, Chaos, Orcs, whatever. That would be amazing, I think, if done right. But this was an interesting approach, I think, to 40k. Like, it was more goofy, like the Orc band, and the Orcs are always a lot of fun, I have to say. But after a while, I was a bit tired of it. But it was kind of what I needed in between big RPGs, so it did its purpose well. I just wish there was a bit more to it, but I guess I'll get that more from other 40k games, say Mechanicus or whatever. So at number 15, we got Shoot Us, Blood and Teeth. A lot of fun. I would recommend it, especially if you like these arcadey, Metal Slug kind of games, but get it for cheap because it's very short, and again, it gets repetitive very quickly. Number 14, we'll stick on the Switch for a bit more. We have Shantae Hero. Really enjoyed it. In here, like, we're stopped with a disappointment, or sort of disappointment. We got into the games I really enjoyed. It unfortunately, this game is a bit low on the list, but simply because I play games that I enjoy a bit more, and I'm pretty sure I did not exploit this game as much as I could, because there are a lot of different gameplay modes. But I was kind of not want to say in a rush, but I say, okay, finish the main story, let's move to something else, kind of thing. Like I don't care to play as this other character, kind of feeling. Like I got what I wanted from it. I really didn't want to play more of it. If I want, eventually, it's here. It's not going anywhere, so. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Shantae games. The problem is they're not as available as I would like them to be. Like, there is I think this is the fourth one. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember now. But there is a fifth one, like something about the sirens, which is already impossible to find without spending a fortune, which it's not going to do that. But this was a lot of fun. I love the art style, love the characters. Playing Shantae always brings a big smile to my face because they're fun, light-hearted, sort of Metroidvania-ish kind of games, but the easier kind. So they're a good, I would say, first approach to a Metroidvania because the levels are not too complicated, like in a Metroid or whatever kind of game, but there's still that taste of the genre. So there is the backtracks, you explore levels you already done to find more secrets and power-ups. Plenty of fun. So, plus it's very colorful, as I said, very lighthearted. I love it. I always said it, I will always say it till my last breath. Shantae will be a fantastic RPG, I think, in a fun, goofy way. So I would hope they'll do it eventually way forward, but because they're kind of keep doing the same thing over and over again, which is fine, but it would be nice to have some slight variation of the formula, in my opinion. Number 13, it's a game I cannot show you because I don't own it, and that is Dark Pictures Chronicles, or whatever it's called, Volume 1, Men of Medan. Played this and Volume 2 together with my best friend and his son, and it was a lot of fun. I didn't know what to expect from these games because I heard about them, like they're very story-driven and story and choices-driven kind of thing, but with a sort of wonky control system. Because I remember, I didn't say a game like Heavy Rain, which is supposed to be amazing story-wise, but I hated the controls. I couldn't play it. But with this, probably because it's a very cooperative kind of game, and in my opinion, the best way to experience these games, it's together with a friend or a group of friends, and you pass along the controllers, so in a couch co-op kind of way. In this way, the game worked marvelously for us. We had so much fun, the three of us together, that made the game better. If I play them on my own, I wouldn't enjoy them as much as I did. But in this way, as I said, couch co-op, it elevates the game quite considerably. Even playing online wouldn't be as fun, in my opinion. We thought about it, but I say, no, it's much better this way. Story-wise speaking, Men of Medan was interesting. You're on a sort of ghost ship. You try to understand what's going on while being chased by pirates of some sort. So with this interesting bunch of characters. I just prefer, as we'll talk in a moment, Volume 2, Little Hope, a bit more just for the setting and what the story. But this was fun. This was fun. It's an interesting and slightly different games. I like some sort of horror games, but this was a new kind for me, as it's all about choices, or what's it called? Having a bad day with remember names. Anyways, it doesn't matter. The thing that you have to press the button at the right time. I cannot remember the terminology. But it was a lot of fun with those moments. Plenty of tension. We made fun of each other constantly and fun of the game of the horror and stuff. But we had a great time. I'd say playing this way immensely elevated the game. So number 13, Men of Medan. Number 12, we have on the PS4 same as Medan, of course. Sakura Wars. Like, I always knew about this series since its days on the Sega Saturn, but obviously not owning a Sega Saturn, I could never have played them. So this was an interesting, like, oh, let's see what Sakura Wars had to offer, though I knew this was very different from the previous games, especially gameplay-wise. So it was not going to be a strategy game, but more of an action hack-and-slash game. And this was fun. I liked it. It was very lighthearted, colorful, bright and colorful, and hyperactive at times. Plus, you have like the visual novel aspect kind of thing, like you interact with the female characters and all of that. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was fun. It's nothing crazy in my opinion. Like, the story was interesting, nothing too crazy. The characters were interesting, nothing to write home about it. But overall, I enjoyed it. It's a fun, kind of niche, I would say, game on the PS4, and if they'll do more of it, I wouldn't mind, because I think there is a lot of potential here. They could do it a bit better, both in terms of stories and characters. So, well, it's a fun game that I play again as a sort of palate cleanser, and I enjoyed it specifically for that. Again, it's one of those games that's exactly what I needed at that time after the games I played. At number 11, we have Dark Pictures Chronicles 2, Little Hope. Everything I said about Men of Medan before in terms of gameplay, experience, etc., but I think it's a bit better because I liked the setting and the story a little more. And we have started a week ago or something, the third game, House of Ashes, but God knows where we'll be able to play it again. Because with Little Hope, like, we met at one point, and then for several weeks we couldn't schedule a meeting, and we couldn't play. So it took way longer than it should have, because these are not particularly long games. But also we messed it up, and we had to start this game 3 times. So there is this intro section of the game, the sort of prologue, which takes place in a house that there's an accident and it's destroyed by a fire and everyone dies, basically. So we had to see that several times. Were again made fun of us and of that, like, oh, I wonder what's gonna happen here and all of that. So it was a lot of fun. But no, Little Hope was cool. We liked it a lot, and also the ending was interesting in the terms of, like, oh, I see, kind of moment. So this is kind of a neat series. Like, never really played. I think I play a couple games like this, but with this style of gameplay, I could get into it a bit more, and especially like with the couch co-op element, I can have more fun. So yeah, I enjoyed my time with this game. We definitely, as I say, will play House of Ashes and the Devil in Me, whatever it's called, and we'll see how the series will continue. But overall, we enjoyed the time with these Dark Pictures games. A lot of fun. Number 10, we stick with the horror, right? And I played and finished Resident Evil 0 on, as you can see, the Origins collection on PS4, and thank God I played it on this. For a simple reason, with this, you can update the controllers. Because as we know, 0 was originally released on the GameCube, I believe. So it's from that generation. So most likely the game was 10 controls back then, or sort of 10 controls, which I don't know if I can manage by now. I'm too much of a fan of the newer approach of Resident Evil. I like the modern gameplay style introduced by 4 onwards. So, as I said, thank God it was that way, because I don't know if I would like it as much if I played with the old school controls. Story-wise, I enjoyed it up until a certain point, because, as we know, Resident Evil 0, it's a prequel. It's kind of like where the story begins, and it's the first experience exposure with the T-virus, etc. The thing, though, that always perplexes me about this game is the fact that you control Rebecca Chambers. As we know, she's a member of STARS. She's introduced in the first Resident Evil game. And I don't like the idea that a member of Stars is introduced to this kind of things before the events of Resident Evil 1. It's just like, oh, and she's then so surprised in Resident Evil 1, etc. But again, of course, we know 0 came up way after 1, so whatever. But overall, it's a fun game. And one thing that I love, it's Resident Evil 0, it's well known about fandoms, and even outside of Resident Evil fan, for being the Resident Evil on a train. That it's true, but I would say the train, it's perhaps 5% of the game. If I'm being generous here, maybe half an hour of the game it's spent on this train. The rest, it's as traditional Resident Evil as you can get. You are into a mansion with the underground laboratory and all of that. So overall, it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I love Resident Evil games. It's really good to be back into the series. So yeah, I have a lot of fun. So number 9. This is interesting to say. For this game specifically, I would like to say a big thank you to Leo the Funny Nerd, since he kind of recommended it to me. Since it's like, oh, sure, you're gonna love this game. It has your name written all over it, and that is Wanted Dead. It was right. I loved it. I was not particularly good at it, but I didn't care because I enjoyed it so much. It has so many elements that I love, like a sort of mix between Blade Runner, Binary Domain, Ghost in the Shell, all great stuff. You add a fun yet a bit janky kind of like combat system. I mean, this is a game with a lot of potential. Like, if only they had a bit more, like a bigger budget, I would love a Wanted Dead 2, I have to say, which it's never gonna happen, I'm sure. But there's so much to love about this kind of like, as I like to call them, B+ games. As like they have a good artistic vision, a good idea, but again, they don't have the budget of bigger studios or whatever, so they do what they can. And I have to say, I greatly enjoyed it. Like, the music was great. I liked the characters, even though they could have been explored a bit more. As I said, the combat system was good, even though it could have been a bit better. But there is so much fun stuff to do in this game besides like the main story, like the karaoke. I think it was hilarious. The ramen eating contest thing, which was all a rhythm game. Even though I don't like rhythm games, but in this context, I had fun. I mean, doing those sections, like, I always had a big smile on my face because, like, why not? I guess. So a lot of fun. Such a fun game out of nowhere. And I'm really glad that I have experienced this. And I'd love to see more of this, even though I don't think so. But maybe in 2024 we'll have other games like this. I'm sure we will, because there's so many games coming. But really, really enjoyed my time with Wanted Dead. And speaking about B+ game, is another one that came out of nowhere, and I enjoyed it way more than I expected. And that is on the Switch, Mato Anomalies. Really out of nowhere. I haven't read anything about it, just like few lines here and there's like, oh, that sounds like an interesting, I don't want to say indie because it's not, but this interesting, this is likely different than usual type of RPG. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. Again, out of nowhere. And also I think I might be the only one who actually like it as much as I did, because this game, if you read online, most of people, like, it's all criticism. It's like, oh, this game sucks, basically. And I think maybe 1% of the people who played it actually played all the way through the end, which was quite the experience. The thing is, the story was very different from your stereotypical, let's say, JRPG, even though it's not. It's a Chinese game. So that's already a bit different because I know next to nothing about Chinese developers and stuff like that. It's very JRPG inspired. But there are interesting elements. Like I would say, I love the combat system. Again, it could have been a bit better, kind of like Wanted Dead as this B plus game. Like great idea, good setting, good gameplay, but everything could be a bit better. To say, I like the story. It went completely insane by the end. It was hard to follow, but especially the first, say, 75% of the game was pretty good. I think, unfortunately, they put the uninteresting part right at the beginning, which was unfortunate because I say like the second and third chapter in particular were actually very good. Like Mist story was great. You have an interesting bunch of characters. The music was all right. I would say nothing spectacular, but like pleasant in the background. And as I said, like I really enjoyed the gameplay because I love this type of turn-based games. It's like a not perfected version of, say, Octopath Traveler or Persona in a way. Like it's turn-based, but you have to find the enemy's weaknesses in order to exploit them in combat. I love that stuff. As I said, Octopath did it, Persona does it, SMT in general. Astra Ascending did it very well, I think, even though the game was mediocre in the story department. But overall, it was a good experience. Really enjoyed it. It got really hard by the end. There's a big difficulty spike to the point that sometimes you have to lower the difficulty, especially with some bosses who were brutal. By the end of the game, I discovered it was massively under-leveled, even though up until that moment, I almost never had problems. I was able to grind, say, 10, 15 levels, and then I stomped the final boss. So, okay. I also like the card system. Because occasionally with one of the characters, Doe, you have to hack into people's brains, which is, again, cool. This sort of like Ghost in a Shell-esque aspect of this cyberpunk games, which are always fun to play. And you have a deck of cards, and you have to defeat the mental defenses of the opponent. It could be very difficult and challenging at times, but I have to say I did all of them, managed to persevere through them because some of them were really tough, and I enjoyed it. It was a neat idea. Again, it's one of those games with plenty of good ideas that could have been a bit better with a bit more budget. That's why, again, I hope for a Mato Anomalies 2. I wouldn't mind it at all, and a sequel which would improve some of the good ideas of the original. Again, I don't think will ever happen, but who knows? I mean, sometimes we have sequels of games that honestly don't deserve it, so why not this? Because in both Wanted Dead and Mato Anomalies, I think there is so much potential for great games in them, but at the same time it's also nice to have these individual games. I mean, not everything needs to be sequelized, if it's even a word, but again, I would like to see more, because in the case of Mato, but also Wanted Dead, but we're talking about Mato here, this is a very interesting world, with very interesting characters. I would like to see more of it. Again, as I said, the ending opened infinite possibilities, was just completely bonkers. It like even shattered the fourth wall at the end, which I did not see it coming. Spoiler, I guess, but who cares? But yeah, really enjoyed my time. I didn't expect it to like these games as much as I did, but I have a big soft spot for these type of games. Again, I love the genres of both Wanted Dead and Mato. I mean, one is a turn-based RPG, the other is a third-person action game. Love them. So add them interesting characters, interesting stories, even if they're not as perfected as a AAA game should be or would be. Like, who cares? I had a great time with both games. Number 7, we're moving back to Resident Evil, because now I have sort of the aim of playing a couple or even 3 of them per year, because they're the perfect palate cleanser in between RPGs and stuff to me. And one of my favorites this year was Resident Evil Revelations. Finally managed to play this. Greatly enjoyed it. You play as Jill Valentine in a wetsuit, which is a big thumbs up. But But also, this might be one of my favorites in terms of settings. I love the idea of Resident Evil inside a big container ship or whatever it is, a passenger ship, cruise, whatever it is, the Queen Zenobia. Excellent, because I think Resident Evil games work very well in a claustrophobic environment. So, like when you're inside of the mansion, like in between corridors and stuff like that. In open spaces, it depends, it can work. But when the entire game you're confined inside a ship, so they're all narrow corridors, you don't see what's there, it's great. I think it works better in terms of tension. You don't know what's behind a corner. I think you can tell this is a 3DS game slightly improved for the PS4, but it doesn't matter because the game played great. I had a lot of fun. The story was interesting, but it has issues. Like, I don't like the whole Terra Grigia thing. It's sort of a Raccoon City 2.0. You don't need another thing like that in this universe, in my opinion, at least. But it created an interesting dynamics between the characters, and I would like to see some of these characters coming back. I'll say, like with most Resident Evil games, I think Capcom should really consider the idea of introducing new characters because the main lineup is getting very old. So it would be a good idea to have some fresh meat in Resident Evil, but we'll see what they'll do with Resident Evil 9. Very curious. I hope they'll continue with the Revelations games. Like in 2024, I'm planning to play a little anticipation there. Revelations 2. Very curious about it. And if it's anything as the first one, I'm going to love it because I really, really enjoyed Resident Evil Revelation. It was, again, as I said, it's a perfect palate cleanser. I love playing this game. They're a lot of fun. I like the lore of Resident Evil and all of that. So it's like great series. I love it. Number 6. It's interesting. Like, knowing me, you would find it perhaps a bit strange that this game is not within the top 5, but I decided to reward another game. And at number 6, we have Trails into Reverie. Oh, finally we have the good Trails game of the year. After the massive disappointment of Asia, I was really looking forward to this, and it didn't disappoint. Like, except for the crossbow section of this game, which were like very annoying, because again, I'm not a fan of these characters and that kind of story. But again, you have the conclusion, proper conclusion, I would say, of the Cold Steel story. It's a sort of an epilogue. It finally ended for good, I would say, Reen's story, which was great. I really enjoyed it. I have to see it all together now. I'm not going to replay these games anytime soon because that would be crazy. But thinking about it, I say, Reen actually had a really good story. For all the people criticizing him, I mean, I don't understand it. Again, like, criticizing Cold Steel for silly reasons and then praising Crossbow, like, I don't get it. To each their own, of course, but I don't get it. Really, really like C's story. I'm not going to tell who he is, but really good. Made me appreciate that character a lot more, even though by the end I would have appreciated even more if he would sacrifice himself. Oh well, we know in Trails the characters cannot die properly in this series. It's one of my major complaints with it, but it's fine. Loved it from a gameplay perspective. I think gameplay-wise might be the best in the series. I think it perfected as much as you can the Cold Steel gameplay mechanics. At one point, it was kind of memey, I would say. The fact that you control like 50 plus characters, you have like 70 master quartz. It's a bit ridiculous, but it's fine. Because you can recruit characters from all over the series, basically. I mean, the important ones. And half of that is Cold Steel, of course. But it was getting a bit excessive, I would say. But it also had the sort of Trails in the Sky the Third vibe. Like, you're in this sort of parallel dimension. You explore this big dungeon. You revisit areas from the previous games, which I like it. Because, as you know, like, Trails in the Sky the Third is my favorite Trails game, and I actually love that dungeon. But I think in that context, Trails in the Sky the Third they did the big party way better than this. Well, primarily because it's like way shorter, but also the way you can divide the party to explore different areas of the dungeon. I think that was brilliant. They should have adapted to this overbloated party, but it's fine. But overall, it's a good game. Introduced some new interesting characters. It's, as I said, it's the big conclusion of so many things started in Trace in the Sky first chapter. Now I'm very excited to see what they're going to do with the next part of the series, Trails into Daybreak. I think it's been translated. I don't understand why they called it Trails to Black, but whatever. So, double thumbs ups. Really, really enjoyed Reverie. Spent more than 100 hours with it, so it's a great game. And yeah, it's a bit weird it's not inside the top 5 because it totally deserves it. But as I said, I decided to reward other games instead because it would be a bit cliche for me to have Trails in the number 1 or whatever, which I don't think it would have deserved it. As much as I liked Reverie, I'm very actually solidly happy with my top 5. So let's go into it. And we're going to start with number 5. To me, this was the surprise of the year. I did not expect to love this game as much as I did. Maybe it might be the best representative of the low expectation, always give great result kind of thing. And again, kind of out of nowhere, I played it just for shits and giggles, and then I say, oh wow, I actually love this game. And that it's Resident Evil 6. In my opinion, this is the most underrated Resident Evil game. I cannot believe I'm saying it because for years, I only heard that this is the worst of the series. Everybody, like so many people despise this game. It's almost, again, I said it before, like a cliche. It's expected to hate Resident Evil 6. Like, I remember watching a YouTube channel like ranking the games, and this was at the bottom. I say it doesn't feel like Resident Evil, and that made me think, what do you want from Resident Evil? Because if you're thinking, oh, I want the tank controls, the fixed camera, like the good old days, but then you praise, say, Resident Evil 4 and say it's the best of the series, then you're not consistent, and I hate inconsistency. I'm not the biggest fan of Resident Evil 4, but from more of a story point of view, gameplay-wise, it's fine. I always liked it. I prefer this type of gameplay to the tank controls by a mile. But I think Resident Evil 5 and 6 considerably improved what 4 started, even though, oh my god, how dare you say that. I actually really like how they structured the game. In a way, it's also its weak point somehow, because they tried to appease to every possible fan. And it's one of those situations like if you try to appease everyone, no one's going to be pleased kind of thing. Because like with Leon's campaign, it's more geared toward the horror, survival horror stuff, even though it's very much action, but it's a bit more in there. Then you have Chris's campaign, which is very like geared towards the action part of Resident Evil. Then you have the third, like Jake's campaign, which I think is the best of the bunch, which is a bit of combination of the two, but you have the Nemesis type of monster following you throughout the game, which was great. And then you have Ada's campaign wrapping up the story. It's a bit more stealthy in a way. So I like this whole thing, but I also understand the potential criticism for this kind of structure. It made it by far the longest game in the series. But again, you don't need to play all of it. You can just play one campaign and that's it. It just, if you want the full understanding of the story, yeah, you have to play all of them, which it's like, yeah, it's 20 something hours. It's not terrible. And also, like, honestly, I was having so much fun with it that I couldn't put it down. At one point, I had to force myself to stop playing Resident Evil 6 to say, oh, I need to play this other game, which I was super excited about, but I cannot stop playing Resident Evil 6. I was replaying Leon's campaign with Helena and having a lot of fun. It's like, enough, because then I'm going to play Chris' campaign with Pierce. Another thing, let's say, the story. I think Resident Evil, especially by this point of its history, really suffer of a sort of identity crisis because You can really tell that 5 was intended to be the conclusion of the story because they killed Wesker. But then 5 did pretty well in terms of sales, financially, etc. So of course they had to do more. But now, like, the main villain was dead. So what are we going to do? They introduced some new ones, which I don't think no one stuck, especially, yeah, we're getting there. But I like Simmons as a villain. Love that kind of, like, evil dickhead kind of character. Loved it. However, the problem with this story is the whole Ada clone part of it. That was stupid, even for Resident Evil standards. I was like, wow, this is bad. It didn't ruin the game for me, but I can see people say, oh, wow, this is terrible. But you have to get all the way to the end to enjoy it. But that was, as I say, silly. But other than that, like, I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun to play. I like this sort of Resident Evil gameplay. Loved it. It's absolutely one of my favorites of this series. And as I said, it's, to me, one of the most underrated. I know it's probably the most divisive of the bunch across the fandom. It's one of those, like, you either love it or you absolutely hate it. And I'm definitely in the first category. I'm a big fan of Resident Evil 6. Absolutely love it. So let's move to the next game. Number 4, we have Wolfenstein The Old Blood. My God, this was amazing. I'm a huge fan of Wolfenstein. It's my favorite first-person shooter series, and The Old Blood has overtaken the spot as my favorite Wolfenstein game, which up until this point was Return to Castle Wolfenstein, not the New Order, strangely enough. Because The Old Blood kind of merged the two games. You have the New Order setting, which is great. This is technically a prequel to the New Order. But it also has elements from Return to Castle Wolfenstein, the more wacky Nazi experiments and creatures and stuff like that, which I really like. I like this nonsense. In a way, the New Order was too serious to me. Now I cannot wait to play I still have a couple of Wolfenstein games. I need to play 2, which is in my 2024 gaming plan, and eventually the New Blood or whatever it's called. Because how bad can it be? It's a Wolfenstein game. But, the gunplay in Old Blood was fantastic. I love some mission was a bit more stealthy. The other one, you had just to kill everyone. So, a lot of fun. Absolutely love it. And the thing that I love about it also, like the Return to Wolfenstein kind of vibe, is that at the end you discover the Nazis are trying to resurrect an ancient monster somehow, I don't know, connected to Frederick Barbarossa. It's like, sure, why not? Just as in Return to Castle Wolfenstein, during World War II, they were planning to resurrect this ancient German king with a big sword. It's like, how is that going to change the war for them? I love Wolfenstein. I absolutely love the nonsense which that the Wolfenstein series is so much. Now, as I said, I cannot wait to play Wolfenstein 2 and see how the story will progress there. But The Old Blood, absolutely love it. As I said, so far it's my favorite Wolfenstein game, which kind of makes it my favorite first-person shooter game ever. I don't know. Definitely a strong contender for that title, though. Number 3 actually. We're in the top 3. This is the game that I decided to reward this instead of Trails into Reverie. Decided, let's push this because I enjoy this immensely, and I always had the feeling like I'm probably gonna like this game. And originally I planned to play this in 2022 but couldn't make the time, so it passed into 2023. I'm so happy that I finally played it, and that is Greedfall by Spiders. I am a sucker for these BioWare-esque type of RPGs. Absolutely love that formula, and Greedfall is just like that. I read an interview to a developer from Spider, or it was the CEO or whatever. They say, we want to continue BioWare's legacy of this great story and character-driven RPGs with choices, etc. And I'm all for it because those are some of my favorite games. And Gridfall did not disappoint. I was already very intrigued by the setting, which ended up being one of my favorite elements of the game. I just love this sort of fantasy version of 17th century Europe with an element of colonization and the relationship between the colonists of this big island and the natives and the big plot there. You explore this huge island. Love it. Absolutely love it. You have some great characters in the game, and I love, again, this sort of, as I said, BioWare type of dialogues and interaction between characters. So, absolutely love it. Highly, I cannot recommend it enough. Maybe it's not as perfect as some other AAA games, but it's really enjoyed it, as I said. And I was very surprised in the most positive way about the upcoming Gridfall 2, which is going to be a prequel, which is interesting, especially considering now that I know what the full story of Gridfall. Very interesting to see how a prequel would work. So it takes place a few years before the events of the SAR date and the first game. So very curious there. And I have to say about Gridfall 2, it might be one of those games that potentially can persuade me towards a PS5, but we'll see. It's a bit too early for that, to me at least. It's definitely that and a couple more, and the possibility of a new Mass Effect game. Obviously, that's a huge incentive, but we'll see. I'm not in a rush, to be honest. Number 2. This is one of the first games I played this year, and it stayed near the top, basically, for most of the year. And no surprises because we're talking about Hollow Knight. Easily one of my favorite Metroidvania. I would argue probably my second favorite because, I prefer Ori Will of the Wisps a bit better. But Hollow Knight is a phenomenal game. Loved everything about it. The setting, the lore, the gameplay. Such a good game. Very happy I managed to get the best ending possible. And there's not much to say. We're all very familiar with Hollow Knight. It just took me a bit longer to get into it. Another big thank you to Leo the Funny Nerd, since he gave me this copy for last Christmas, if I remember correctly. So it was a good incentive to play it. But it deserves all the praise and the reputation. And I have to say, whenever it will be released, the second Hollow Knight game will have some big shoulders to fill. It's like the sequel to one of the most beloved indie games ever. So it will be like big shoes to fill. That's for sure. But Hollow Knight, easily one of my favorite games of the year and one of my favorite Metroidvania games that I ever experienced. It was absolutely brilliant. Finally, number 1. It kind of became obvious as I was playing it. I think it was like February, March, something like that. And it's going to stick as the best game that I played this year since then. And it's not really a surprise because how can you beat Tales of Arise? This game is absolutely fantastic. I'm a big fan of the Tales of series, and this is by far its best representative. To me, this is one of those games that everyone should play because it's one of the best action RPGs that I ever played. Combat and fighting was so much fun in this. But it also features a fantastic story, a great cast of characters, which is usually one of the strengths of the Tales series. But also great music. And as I say, the setting was so interesting, big science fantasy kind of thing. Love it, the whole struggle between Rena and Dana. Great stuff. And again, the characters, these are fantastic and unforgettable characters from Alphen and Shion, but everyone else. I really, really enjoyed my time with Tales of Arise, which As I said, easily my favorite representative of the Tales series, which is definitely within like my favorite RPG series. But this is on a level on its own. Like there's no comparison with the rest of which I played some great Tales games, but this was really something different. Props to Bandai Namco to develop a phenomenal game, and I'm very curious to see what they'll do next because yeah, they released a DLC for it, which is a sort of. And I'm sure it's going to be great because, again, it's more Tales of Arise. But I'm very curious to see what they'll do next, what the next big Tales game would be. Because if it's at least at the same level as Arise, we're in for a treat. And if it's better, oh my god. So there you have it. These was my Game of the Year list for 2023. I'm look forward for like the games I'm gonna play this year, 2024. Already have a plan. Maybe I'll do a video eventually and see what happens there. But at the moment, thank you so much for watching, guys. Happy New Year, and like always, take care.